Hello again, everyone. Today I am here with tray 2 of 4 of my hand-turned acrylic fountain pens. I will put a link down below to tray 1 of 4, which is a video I've already done. And as I said in that video, I'm not going to test these pens. I'm just going to show you what nibs I have on them and tell you about the makers. And if I can remember who makes the blank, I'll let you know, but I won't always remember. So let's go ahead and get started. So this first one here, I'm gonna move this tray out of the way. Oh, and the info about the tray is in video 1 of 4. So this is from Galen Leather. So I would refer you to that first video because it gives a little bit more detail about the tray itself, which also comes with a glass cover. And this is the second one I have stacked up. All right, so let's see if I can just put those completely out of the frame there. So this one is from River City Pen Company. And this is one I bought directly from their website. Most of these are actually pens that I purchased directly from the websites of these makers. But someone did inquire about how to start a custom order with a particular maker. And someone had already commented that one of the best ways to start that process is to send them a message on Instagram, and I agree with that. That's probably the best way, and that's the way that I have generally ordered custom pens. Sometimes I will actually email them directly. Makers that have their own website sometimes have an email address that they refer to where you can contact them about setting up a custom order. I would say you know, test it out first so that you kind of know the process. And it depends on the maker. Sometimes you will indicate. So with one of these pens, which is the next pen actually, I saw them unpacking the blanks on Instagram and saw one of the blanks that I was interested in, and then directly contacted that company and said, hey, I'm really interested in one of those blanks. Do you still have one left? Could you make me a pen out of it? And then that's how that happened. But sometimes the process is completely custom, and some websites, the ones that are a little bit more, maybe have been around for a while or do more custom specific orders, they sometimes will have like a total custom order form on their website. But I've found that generally the ones with a custom order form on their website have more custom orders, and the custom orders take longer. So it really varies, but I would say the best way is to reach out to a maker on Instagram, start following them, and then, because I think pretty much all of the makers that I have represented here have an Instagram account. As I think everyone, there might be 1 or 2 that don't, but generally they do, and you can just message them and say, hey, I'm interested in a custom pen, like how does your process work? And some people have their own blanks that they've purchased. I have never done that, but you could go that route as well if you have a maker of blanks that you like and you want to have a pen made out of that blank. That kind of adds an extra step, which is why I haven't done that. You would have to order the blank, either have it shipped directly to the maker or to you, and then you'd have to ship it to the maker. So it's a little bit more complicated, and I have not done that, probably mostly because because it's complicated. But the majority of these pens are not custom. They are, that I have, they are mostly off the shelf. And one of the advantages of that is you can see the specific pen that you're going to get, because there is some variation with hand-poured acrylic blanks. So I kind of like being able to see the exact pen that I'm going to get, because if you get the custom order, you can't always see exactly what it's going to look like. The disadvantage of that is you may be missing out on some of the cooler blanks that kind of get all taken up by people who are ordering custom orders. So it's just a mixed bag, but I hope that sort of answers the question and gets people started a little bit if they do want to try to do their first custom order of a fountain pen. And prices do vary. They're generally pretty reasonable compared to store-bought pens, I would say. But you know, I've noticed that of late, like this one was a slightly more expensive pen, although this was off the shelf. And that's because it is polished on the inside, which, as I understand, is a pretty labor-intensive process. So pen makers tend to charge a little bit more for that. Okay, well, let's get back to the list here. If you have any more questions about, custom orders or that sort of thing, you can ask me down below and I will answer when I can. But I think I've kind of described the basics of how to get started on that. Okay, so this, like I said, is a River City Pen Company pen. And this is kind of an unusual pen. I haven't seen a lot of these types on River City Pen Company's website, but it has a clear, this portion is from a clear acrylic blank, which has little stars in it, which I thought was really super cool. And then the top is just sort of a pink, variegated pink resin. You might not be able to see the variation too much there. And then this has a Bach nib. So I put actually a cheaper long knife nib on here, which is one of the types of nibs that I've been able to get. And again, I can't remember, either from Etsy or eBay, and they're super cheap. You can get like 2 for $20 or maybe even less than that. But they are like an architect nib. They're not as good as a nib grind as one you'd get from a nib grinder, but if you're looking for just like a quick and dirty, easy architect, they're pretty good for that. And I would recommend taking a look for them. And they also have kind of this cool flame design. They actually come in a couple different designs, but I thought the flame one was cool. So the pack I got had like one silver toned one like this, and then one with silver and gold, which I thought was pretty cool. But I have them on a bunch of pens, and I mean, they're definitely serviceable as nibs, and I like them. Okay, so this next one was a custom order from, this is River City Pen Company again. Sorry, I had them listed here, and because I had 2 in a row from River City Pen Company, I only listed them once. So this one is from River City Pen Company, and this is a blank from Brooks Blanks. This is I think it's the Water Lily Koi is the name of it. And this is a blank that I had been trying to get a pen made in for quite a long time. And I saw this particular maker, River City Pen Company, unboxing some blanks from Brooks Blanks on their Instagram. And then I immediately said, do you still have one of these particular ones left? And they did. So then they made me one. And that was actually really, really quick. So if the company doesn't need to pour the blank themselves and then go through, an additional process before just making the pen, it's going to be faster. And this had a pretty quick turnaround, actually, just like a couple weeks or maybe 3 weeks total from order to when I got it. So that's pretty good for a custom pen, because often it can take longer. For example, I have ordered a Carolina Pen Company pen that I ordered not this last Christmas, but the Christmas before. So I've been waiting for over 1.5 years. And they did say that they're behind on their orders, so they acknowledge that and everything. So I'm just hanging on to the order because I've already put a deposit down. And hopefully eventually I'll get that pen. If I do, I'll show it on the channel. And then there's another one that I have on order. I think it's from Tailored Pen Company, but I can't remember. And that one's taken a little longer too, but it's been nowhere near as long as 1.5 years. But anyway, let's get back to the pen. So this is by River City Pen Company again. And as you can see, they have a few different models that they make. This is more of like a, not fancy model, but I like it. It's very comfortable to hold. And this particular one, it has a beautiful, beautiful grip section that really has these beautiful little swirls in it. This is just, it's a super beautiful. I've really been loving this sort of pink and green combination. This is sort of pinkish purple, but still the same kind of effect. And on here, I have a fine Bach palladium nib. I was finally able to source a palladium nib, just the unit. Bach, I think, is the only one who makes them. And I got this from fpnibs.com in Spain. It's probably my second, or maybe it's even my first most pricey nib. No, it's probably my second priciest nib that I own. But it's lovely, lovely, lovely. I love it. If I could afford it, I would buy one in every size because I just really love the bounciness of this nib. I won't leave it open too long because it'll dry out, but This is a fine, and fine is kind of my sweet spot for the more bouncy nibs, but that's just personal preference. That's what I prefer. All right, so let's move on to the next one. So this is by Anawim Woodworks, and I showed at least one in my last fountain pen tour videos, tray 1 of 4, where I had sort of a larger in diameter pen from this company. And this is one of the more narrow ones that I've gotten, and they really do vary. So you just kind of have to look at the description to see what the diameter is. And that's kind of what they're measuring is the width of the pen. And because this tapers a little bit, it's a little more narrow down here than it is up here. But this is, I believe it's another Cocoon Blanks blank, which like I said, I clearly like Cocoon Blanks, but I think, I've forgotten the name of it, but they have a lot of, it's not the Lotus series, but it's not Ink Drop. It's something like that. But I really, really like the effect. And this one is polished on the inside, which I really like. And then the nib I have on here, what nib do I have on here? Oh yeah, so this is an interesting one because I have a Pelican steel double broad nib, and this is one where I actually took off the collar on this nib and then put it in a flexible nib factory housing. So I've done a lot of, swapping around and trying things with different nibs, and this is one that's actually worked out really well. So this, I think, is a Jowo nib unit that this fit into, and it works really well. If I, it was really, really hard to get the collar off of the Pelican nib though. So I've been hesitant to try this again because you can get just nib units from Pelican, both gold and steel. And this was just from a different pen that it wasn't really working on. It was another Pelican pen that it wasn't working on. And I got a replacement nib for that, and then thought I would find a use for this elsewhere, and it works well here. But the collar was so hard to remove that I have not gotten just like a gold nib unit or something to try this kind of setup on a different pen, just because I don't want to damage the nib. I didn't damage this nib, but it was a close call. Basically, it was just the collar is super tight on there. So that was kind of an experiment, and I probably wouldn't have done it if it were not just this extra nib lying around. Okay, so this next one is a company I don't think I have profiled yet. This is Syndrus Pen Company, and this person is located in the UK. And this is a really beautiful demonstrator pink sparkly pen. And this one has, and see, so you see how there's ink here? I haven't checked out this pen in a little while. So my guess is that this housing has cracked. And yeah, I can even see a little bit of a crack here. So on some pens that are not demonstrator, this could be going on and you wouldn't necessarily see it, because here you can actually see it. So I'm gonna have to take this pen apart and probably replace the housing on this nib unit. And this has been a real problem with Jowo nib units. Their housing has been cracking right and left. I have so many spare nibs that include a housing that it hasn't been a huge issue for me to replace them as they break, but I have over 30 housings that have broken on Jowo nib housings or nib units. And that's just not cool. I thought, so I did an original sweep of all of my pens and found like, I think it was almost 15. And it was a little bit after there had been this big hubbub about these housings cracking, and I didn't really want to seek compensation or, try and get new housings, especially not from Jowo, because I figured they might just crack again. So I've just been swapping them out for other housings, although now I'm getting low. I think I probably had, about 35 spare nibs from various things. And now it's getting down to just a few. So this is going to be one of my last few, but this is how you might be able to tell that has happened, because this should not happen on a healthy housing, I should say. you should not see any ink in here at all. And because there's ink in here, it generally means that the housing is cracked and ink is seeping through. So that said, that's just something to watch out for. And it's only happened to me, and I've only heard of it happening on Jowo brand nib units. So, and this, even though it's an Esterbrook nib, they are made by Jowo. So, so this nib unit is from Jowo. I'll have to make a note of this one and replace it. But anyway, so this is actually a specialty nib grind from Esterbrook. This is a scribe nib. They've come out with a couple of different, I'm actually gonna leave it in there so the nib doesn't totally dry out. They have issued, I think it's maybe 3 or 4 now, specialty nibs for Esterbrook pens. Because they are Jowo nib units, you can put them on other pens like I've done. This originally came on an Esterbrook, and then I swapped it for a vintage Esterbrook nib and then put this nib on here just so that I could still use this nib and use the vintage nibs, but the vintage nibs only fit on the Esterbrooks. So that's why I did that. But I actually really like this scribe nib. It's sort of like a cross between an Architect and a Zoom nib almost, because you can get different line weights depending on where you hold it. It was meant to be an Architect nib that would accommodate a bunch of different writers and the angle that they wrote at, but you are going to get a different line weight depending on how your angle of holding it. All right, and like I said, I'll have to make a note of that one, needing a new housing. Okay, so on to this one. I'll try and speed it along. I was going to make this video a little shorter, and then I had all these explanations. So this one is another one from Anawim Woodworks, which is another one of the narrower models. And this one originally I had, well, I guess it's still on here. I had specifically purchased this one for a Visconti nib unit, because with a Bach nib, or this pen accommodates a Bach nib. So I found another housing on Flexible Nib Factory that accommodates a Visconti nib. So this is the Visconti nib that was on my original, my one and only Visconti Homo sapiens pen, and this is the gold nib. And then I replaced that with a palladium nib because that was really what I wanted on there. And so I definitely did not want this nib to go to waste. So I put it, I specifically sought out this pen because at the time I didn't have a lot of Bach accommodating pens. So I specifically purchased this one because it handled Bach and it fits pretty well. I had a hell of a time getting this nib out of the pen. That's worthy of a whole other video. It was it was a challenge. I ended up having to get a special tool to remove it. But anyway, if you're interested in hearing the story, I could do a whole other video on it. But it was a challenge. But since I purchased this one, because this was a little while ago, and I think this might be another Brooks Blanks blank, but I'm not sure, or maybe not. I honestly cannot remember. But since I've purchased this one, a lot more pen companies are making their pens use Bach nibs or nib units because I think partially because of the Jowo problem with the housing. So there's that one. And then this next one is from Little Pen Designs, and this is a Brooks blank, but I cannot remember what the blank is. So here, this pen has a bold or broad cursive italic, and this one I got from FP Nibs. This was one I had ground just on a regular steel nib. So this is a broad nib that I had him grind down into a cursive italic. So it's a lovely, lovely nib. I actually really like his cursive italics, the guy who runs the company and does the nib housings. So I would highly recommend nibs from there. All right, so this next one is kind of a little bit of a special model because I don't have very many like this. So this is another one from River City Pen Company, and this is a hybrid model that has wood and resin. So you've got sort of this burl wood down here, which is really pretty, and then you have the resin on top. And I think they were made in-house, but I'm not sure. They might not have been, actually. They were probably made by someone else. But this one has a fine 14 karat nib by Franklin Christoph. So this, again, would be a Jowo housing, and I think this might also be leaking because I can see a little bit of ink here. So this is really a drag. Like, this is like an epidemic in my Yovo brand nib housings or nib units. It's really, really bad. So I'll have to look at this one as well to see if that's actually ink or if that's just part of the acrylic. But it has definitely happened on gold nibs as well, because I think for a while people were saying, oh, well, the Yovo gold nib housings are not having that problem, but they definitely are, because I've had another gold Yovo nib have that same problem, which really should not be the case. And, you know, at some point I probably should reach out to someone to complain, but a lot of these are old, or older, you know, like a few years old, but still, it just really seems unacceptable. Anyway, so this is a Woodshed Pen Company pen, and this is one that I just bought from them directly. They have a lot of really nice designs. All of the pens from them are pretty much the same model, a little bit shorter than the other pens, and really the main difference is the blank that you're getting with that. And this one has a fine posting nib. So a posting nib has this little curve in it here. And the idea is that you can get a really, well, because this is fine, so you can get a fine line writing this way, and then you can actually write on this entire surface here and get a pretty broad writing stroke on the back. So it's a very interesting nib. I actually like it quite a bit, but I find I don't use it as much as other nibs just because it's kind of a specialty nib, and it's a little bit different in feel. All right, so let's go ahead and go on to the next one here. This is by London Pen Company. I think this is the only pen I have by London Pen Company, and I'm pretty sure this is another Brooks Blanks, but again, I don't remember the particular blank name. And I have found that the shape and design, I mean, they're all so similar, right? But the London Pen Company, at least this particular model that's a little smaller, I think they do have some bigger ones, it's just not my favorite as far as the way it feels in my hand. I feel like the grip section is a little small. The threads are a little close to the grip section because I tend to hold my pens a little bit further back. But, you know, it's all personal preference, and they are really nice, nicely made pens. So what I have on here is a Franklin Christoph Extra Fine Flex 14 karat. This is another really nice nib. It's not super flexy, but it does have a little bit of flex. And I would recommend that if you do get one of these, because they're made by Yovo, that you do get the extra fine, because it's so soft that you're going to get more than an extra fine line. All right, so two more left. This one is another one from Woodshed Pen Company, but I actually purchased this through the Nib Grinder. And I actually don't have the Nib Grinder nib on here anymore. I've swapped it out with on another pen. But I purchased this with a custom grind and this pen. The Nib Grinder does have quite a bit of stock of hand-turned acrylic pens, which are actually all really nice. Their website is a little bit, you know, like not modernized. So they actually refer to a spreadsheet where they have them listed, but you can see the pictures. So I would say just go to the Nib Grinder's website, and then there is I think there's a link to like see available pens or something like that. Just go there, scroll through the website. It might be a little hard to find, but they do have them. And I think this is a Brooks Blanks Bohemian Twilight, which is a really pretty blank. And then the nib that I've put on here is a Waverly Fine. Now, Waverly is kind of the opposite of a posting nib, so it has a little turn up at the end. And this I actually like a lot. The Waverly nib is one I really, really like. You can get a little bit of line variation, but I think part of it is just the angle at which the nib is, and it's really comfortable for my writing. And you can also write on the opposite side a really thin line. So Waverly is more my speed than the posting nib, but originally the Waverly and the posting nibs were only available through Pilot, I think, on some of their model pens, and mostly in the European market, or the Japanese market, Asian market rather. But they've become more available here. All right, so this is the last one. This is by Walltown Pen Company. This is their smaller design. This is one of their in-house pours. It's really, really beautiful. Actually, I think that all of their pens are in-house pours, but this is a color shift pen. So depending on the angle, it'll be more like brownish or greenish. So it's really a cool pen. You can see here it looks a little more brownish orange, and here it looks a little more green. Very, very cool. The nib that I have on here is a broad Bach rose gold nib. So this is just a standard steel nib, and it looks like I have a little bit of seepage here. I should clean that nib. This will happen. You get kind of a little crusty nib with some highly pigmented inks. It tends to happen more with like purples and pinks. And this is a purple ink that's in here now. Yeah, and the colored nibs by Bach, they're just the same as the regular steel nibs by them. They just have a coating on them. For rose gold, they also have black, they have red. I've forgotten what other color. Oh, they have a purple. So you can do a little Googling if you want to have like a colored steel nib by Bach. They have quite a selection. But this is one that I purchased more recently. By more recently, I mean a few months ago, because I have been cutting down on my fountain pen purchases. And this one, I've been trying to get more Bach nibbed pens just because of the Yovo problem. All right. Well, that's it for today. That's all I had for you today. That's all these pens in tray 2 of 4. So, like I said, I'm going to have to go back and look at a couple of these, I think it was these two, to see if I need to replace the housings on there. It's really, really a drag. This is kind of, if you have older Yovo nib unit pens with older Yovo nib units in them, I would check them for leaking. And you will be able to visibly see the crack if there's one in it. But I think there's some that I've changed out a couple of times. Like I've had to change it out twice on the, because I think this one I may have replaced already. Or no, it was the gold one I've already replaced. So I really do hope that this is not cracked again, because I obviously got it from my pool of housings that I had laying around, and then that was clearly prone to cracking too. But anyway, that's a whole saga. I could talk more about that. It's very irritating, basically. But if you have any questions about any of these pens or anything you want to ask me about, generally about these fountain pens, feel free to ask below and I'll answer when I can. But in the meantime, have a great day. I hope to see you next time. Feel free to like this video if you enjoyed it. Feel free to subscribe to my channel to keep track of future videos, and take care. Thanks. Bye for now.